Hey guys, tonight we fall headfirst into the chilling, bizarre, and occasionally hilarious world of Norse mythology. Imagine an endless black void stretching on all sides, colder than a Scandinavian ex-boyfriend's stare. And on the opposite end is a roaring inferno so hot, your eyebrows would evaporate just thinking about it. These weren't places you visited. They were the very ingredients of creation. Tonight, you'll float between the flames and the frost. Long before gods like Odin or Thor made their dramatic entrances. And fair warning, if you were hoping to survive the dawn of the Norse cosmos, you probably won't. Giants are involved. So are a cow and an ice baby. Things get weird fast. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your local time and where you're watching from. I love seeing where you're tuning in from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You blink. Nothing. No sky. No sun. Nah, grass beneath your feet. Just a void. The Ginnunga Gap. It's not even peaceful. It's tense. Like the universe is holding its breath. To your left looms Niflheim, the realm of eternal frost, where jagged shards of ice float lazily through mist and deathly cold. To your right, Muspelheim, the flaming inferno, where fire giants stretch and flex, their sweat sparking new suns. This is before time, before memory, before tea kettles. Everything's either frozen solid or on fire. The middle zone, your cozy little perch in this nightmare, is where things start to stew. From Niflheim, rivers slither out. These are the Ilivagar. And they're not your sparkling mountain brooks. They're venomous, dark, sluggish. As they creep toward Ginnungagap's center, they begin to freeze. Layer upon layer builds until the weight of all that icy venom births someone. His name is Ymir. And he's not cute. He's a giant. Sweaty. Mostly naked proto-being, who immediately begins leaking other beings out of his armpits. Literally. That's how he reproduces. No dating apps, just damp pits and family trees that sprout overnight. But wait, Ymir's not alone for long. Another miracle appears. This time, from a salt-licked block of ice. You crouch to watch as a great cow, Authumbla, slurps at it like a popsicle. She's massive, serene, and probably lactose-free. As she licks, a figure emerges from the ice, a man named Buri, the first of the Aesir gods. His descendants will eventually overthrow Ymir's giant ilk. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's pause here for a second. Norse mythology doesn't do things the easy way. There's no gentle let there be light. Instead, you get a cow tongue, carving gods from ice, and a giant dripping people from his underarms. Scholars still argue whether Ymir was supposed to symbolize chaos, potential, or just good old-fashioned Nordic weirdness. Either way, you're staring at a world where the building blocks are beef, ice, and cosmic fluids. You fast forward slightly, gods now exist. Odin, Vili, and Ve, sons of Bor himself, son of licked-from-ice Buri, are not fans of their sweaty ancestor Ymir. In what you might call the first Norse family drama, they kill him. Not just kill him, slaughter him so thoroughly that his blood floods the world, drowning most of the other frost giants. You can almost hear Odin grumble. Clean up on Isle's Ginnungagap. You slosh through Ymir's blood, which becomes the oceans and rivers. His flesh forms the land. His bones, the mountains. His teeth, the cliffs. His skull. That's the sky now. They pin it up with 4 dwarves north, south, east, and west, who have the unfortunate job of literally holding up the heavens. One of them definitely calls in sick at least once a month. Ymir's eyebrows get used too. The gods fashion Midgard, our lovely earth, from them, shaping a fortress around it to keep out the remaining giants. You're technically standing in the brows of a murdered cosmic being. Sleep tight. The sky still needs some flair. So the gods snatch sparks from Muspelheim's fire and fling them upward. Voilà star. They organize night and day, using 2 chariots, one hauling the sun driven by a girl named Soleil. The other, the moon, driven by her brother, Mani. Both are being constantly chased by hungry wolves. Shelenhati. You look up, watching the poor celestial siblings race across the heavens, doom nipping at their heels. That's your nightlight. But not everything is blood and fire. The gods set up shop in Asgard, their glimmering city in the sky. You peer across the Bifrost, a shimmering rainbow bridge connecting Midgard to Asgard. It glows with impossible colors, arcing like a magical oil slick across the void. A security guard named Heimdall watches it day and night. He has gold teeth, supernatural hearing, and probably insomnia. Back on Earth, the gods are crafting humans. They find 2 tree trunks on the shore driftwood, essentially, and breathe life into them. The man is Ask. The woman Embla. No apple. No snake. Just salty timber and divine mouth-to-mouth. Ask and Embla wake up with no idea how weird their origin story is. Lucky them. You wander through this freshly built cosmos. There's an elegance to the madness. 9 realms, all spinning within the branches of Yggdrasil. The World Tree. It's a vast ash tree connecting everything heaven, earth, underworld. You lean against its bark, trying not to disturb the squirrel, Ratatosker, who zips up and down its trunk, delivering insults between an eagle at the top and a dragon at the roots. Yes, it's a literal, trash-talking squirrel. Honestly, he might be your favorite character so far. Still, Yggdrasil groans. It's ancient, even in this golden age. The tree shows signs of stress. Nidhugr, a dragon, gnaws at its base. A pair of deer nibble its leaves. 3 mysterious Norns sit by a nearby well, carving the fate of every creature into the wood with solemn, eerie focus. You peek at their work. Nope. Bad idea. Nobody wants to know their own ending. What's striking is that even in the beginning, everything in Norse mythology is tinged with inevitability. The gods know their world will end. It's not a matter of if, but when. This sense of doom permeates everything. And yet they build. They rule. They tell jokes. They ride chariots pulled by goats and craft chains from cat footsteps. More on that later. For now, you sit in the crook of Yggdrasil, watching the stars race and the cosmic tree creak. The universe is alive, but it's restless. Something's always stirring. You inhale frost and wood smoke. The air is sharp, electric. You're not just witnessing a creation myth. You're inside it. Your feet dangle over the edge of Midgard. Your fingers graze the edge of a realm where giants still lurk. Nursing ancient grudges, you're beginning to realize nothing in Norse mythology ever stays calm for long. You squint into the blood-red horizon of a newborn world. And there he is, Ymir, the father of frost giants, now sprawled in divine chunks across the cosmos, like someone forgot to clean up a really messy barbecue. His rib bones rise like jagged mountains. His brains turned into storm clouds. And beneath your feet, the crust of the earth is literally his skin. It's all slightly horrifying, especially if you're a fan of keeping your ancestors in one piece. Still, the gods had plans, and Ymir's dismemberment was step one on their home renovation checklist. But even dead, Ymir's legacy writhes. The frost giants, his children, grandchildren, who knows what kind of cousins survive the deluge of his blood and regroup in Jotunheim. You can feel their resentment simmering through the icy cliffs. They weren't exactly invited to the gods' new Midgard party, and being snubbed from the cool kids' table never ends well in mythologies. Meanwhile, you stumble into the gods' cleanup crew, Odin and his brothers. Odin's the obvious leader. Tall, mysterious, disturbingly calm. He's the type who probably reads ancient runes at brunch. But don't overlook Vili and Ve, the lesser-known brothers with just enough personality to avoid being completely forgotten. Together, they bring order. They hoist the sky. They name things. They invent time. Like actual time. Day. Night. Years. Seasons. Thanks to them, your calendar exists. You're welcome. As you wander past the glittering rivers and suspiciously symmetrical forests of Midgard, a single question itches at the back of your mind. Why create humans at all? The gods already have Asgard, full of halls, ale, and vaguely immortal parties. But no, they need someone to admire their work, or possibly clean up after them. Enter Ask and Embla again. Now, clothed and blinking in confusion. They're charmingly helpless. A bit like newly installed apps still buffering. The gods teach them how to talk, think, and mercifully bathe. Ask and Embla don't just survive, they become the ancestors of humanity. Every mortal you'll meet, every brave Viking or unfortunate saga victim, traces back to these two driftwood test subjects. Just as things are settling into a divine routine, the gods realize that chaos is never far away. Ymir's death didn't end the problem of the giants, it just annoyed them. Odin, in his eternal paranoia, or possibly justified foresight, erects a massive wall of eyelashes. Yes, eyelashes around Midgard, harvested from Ymir's generous face. It's both weird and effective. You wouldn't want to attack a city fortified with eyebrow fencing either. One historical fact that's often overlooked: Norse cosmology wasn't frozen in place. It evolved across centuries of oral tradition, shaped by seafaring poets, fireside bards, and the occasional Viking who got lost somewhere in Scotland. Scholars still argue whether the earliest versions of the Ymir myth were metaphorical, regional, or just fever dreams. After too much fermented herring, what we know is filtered through poetic Eddas, sagas, and 13th century Christian scribes with a flair for drama. But back to your view. Above your head, you spot a ripple. The gods are building Asgard. Not just any home, it's the home of homes. Glistening with golden halls. Statues of themselves, because modesty is for mortals. And architectural flourishes that scream, We're very important. Thank you. You cross the Bifrost, that dazzling rainbow bridge, and reach the realm of the gods. The light here is different. Warmer. Even if half the gods are secretly plotting something, you pass through gates lined with shields. Nodding awkwardly at Heimdall, who's staring at you, like he already knows every decision you've ever made. His hearing is so sharp he can detect grass growing and wool fibers whispering. Makes you wonder how he gets any sleep. Inside Asgard, it's a mess of new construction. Odin's throne sits high in a tower called Hlidskjalf. From there, he can look across all 9 realms, sort of the original CCTV setup. He sees giants stomping around Jotunheim, dwarves bickering underground, and humans nervously inventing fire. His eye twitches. He needs more knowledge, more control. And this is where the story darkens. Odin isn't your standard wise old man with a beard and a Santa complex. He's relentless, willing to bleed, break, and sacrifice everything to uncover the secrets of the cosmos. You follow him to Mimir's well, an ancient spring of wisdom hidden beneath Yggdrasil. But wisdom doesn't come cheap. Odin plucks out one of his own eyes and drops it into the water. You hear the splash, and suddenly, he sees differently, deeper, not better, just further. Like seeing every possible failure all at once, you'd think giving up an eye would satisfy him. Nope. Later, he stabs himself with a spear and hangs from Yggdrasil for 9 nights, refusing food or drink, teetering between life and death, all for runes, mystic symbols that hold the secrets of magic, poetry, and prophecy. He emerges, half dead and fully haunted, clutching knowledge like a man who now regrets asking too many questions on the internet. You sit beside him as he carves runes into wood. Each letter slices through time. Each stroke carries weight. Historians still debate whether these rituals were based on actual shamanic practices or were symbolic, stitched together from multiple tribal traditions. Either way, it's intense, and frankly, a little extra. Elsewhere, things are getting noisy. Thor is born Odin's thunder-happy son. You hear him long before you see him, the crack of lightning, the distant scream of a goat. His arrival shakes Asgard. Literally. He's not subtle. Even as a child, he's wielding a tiny hammer and throwing tantrums that create weather patterns. You already feel sorry for whoever ends up babysitting him. And then there's Loki. Ah yes, Loki, Odin's blood brother, adopted companion, and future walking headache. He's already slinking around Asgard, charming everyone with half-truths and inappropriate jokes. At first, it's fun. Loki fixes problems. Then he causes bigger ones. But you'll get to that. For now, the world seems stable. The sky sparkles with sun and moon. The earth blooms. Gods rule. And giants simmer angrily behind mountain walls. You lie back on a patch of moss in Midgard, aware that everything is temporary. Even gods can't cheat fate forever. You hear Ratatosker's faint chittering above. Somewhere in Niflheim, mist thickens. Muspelheim flares a little brighter. And far off in time, a wolf stretches its jaw impossibly wide. You lean your back against the thick bark of Yggdrasil and stare upward, tracing the endless knots and twisting limbs of the great world tree. It creaks above you, impossibly tall, connecting all 9 realms like a cosmic filing cabinet. and, if you tilt your head just right, you catch glimpses, flashes of strange lands, tucked into its branches. There's Asgard gleaming above, Midgard stretching out around you, and somewhere below, a darker place that smells, faintly, of damp stone and poor life choices. You've made it to the center of the Norse universe, and this tree is the spine of it all. You step carefully, because even the squirrels here are trouble. Ratatoskratses by, twitchy and furious, ferrying insults between the eagle perched at the very top and Nithhoger, the dragon coiled around the roots. That's his whole job, starting drama. Between beings who'll never meet in person, you resist the urge to throw him a peanut and instead wander downward, toward the base of the tree where things get much wetter. There, 3 women sit by a sacred well urd, Verdandi, and scold. The Norns, they're hunched over their carving tools, etching runes into Yggdrasil's bark with the calm menace of people who know exactly how your life will end and aren't impressed. You try to read over their shoulders, but the words twist like smoke. Time here is soup past, present, and future swirl together, with fate acting as the soggy spoon. The Norns tend the well of Urd, whose waters feed the tree and determine destiny for gods and mortals alike. Even Odin respects them, maybe fears them. They are beyond trickery, beyond bribes, and, tragically, beyond small talk. You shuffle away before they start writing something embarrassing about you into the wood. Up again you climb, slipping through branch realms. Vanaheim, land of the fertility gods, Alfheim, glowing and bright, full of elves who are somehow beautiful and extremely unhelpful, and Nidavellir, the underground home of dwarves who smell like iron and sarcasm. Each realm has its quirks. Some glow, some groan, and at least one Svartalfheim is basically just damp. But the view, oh, the view. The 9 realms spin on and around Yggdrasil like flies orbiting a very irritable deer. You marvel at the system. It's less a tidy solar system and more a madman's shelving unit of chaos, kept stable only by ancient magic and the gods' refusal to admit defeat. Your journey next takes you back to Asgard, where Odin's eye sockets twitch as he stares into the distance. You follow his gaze to the well of Ymir. Yep, another one. Norse mythology loves a good well. This one's guarded by Ymir, an old, severed head that somehow still speaks. Odin, in his thirst for knowledge, offered his eye to drink from it. Now, he visits Ymir for counsel. Though, whether it's for wisdom or weird companionship is debatable. Speaking of knowledge, Odin's ravens, Hugin and Munin, thought and memory, swoop through the clouds and settle on his shoulders. They fly across the realms daily, gathering gossip. Think of them as the original social media algorithm, but feathery and more judgmental. You swear one of them side-eyes you. While Odin obsesses over destiny and prophetic riddles, another god is far more interested in direct action, Thor. You hear him before you see him. The crash of Mjolnir rings out across the heavens, followed by the bleating of goats. Yes, goats pulling his chariot at terrifying speeds. Thor's commute is noisy, clumsy, and extremely dangerous to bystanders. You step aside as Thor lands nearby, cape flapping, Redbeard smoking slightly from some recent lightning incident. He's not subtle, but he is beloved. especially by mortals. Why? Because he protects Midgard from giants. He's the divine bouncer, the hammer-swinging enforcer, the guy you call when diplomacy fails and you need someone to punch a mountain in half. His goats, Tangrisner and Tanjost, snort impatiently. At night, Thor eats them. The next morning, he resurrects them with his hammer. As long as the bones remain unbroken, the goats live again. You watch him gnaw on a leg while explaining thunder with the same tone someone might use to describe a sandwich. According to him, every clap of thunder is just him swinging Mjolnir. No atmosphere required. One mainstream fact, often glossed over, is that Thor was more than just a brute. In some myths, he cross-dresses to retrieve his stolen hammer from a giant's wedding, managing to pass as a bride until his appetite gives him away. Historians still argue whether these tales were intended to satirize masculinity or simply reflect older, flexible traditions of gender and identity within Norse stories. What's not debated is that Thor is extremely bad at patience. While Odin whispers to winds and waits for fate to bloom, Thor kicks down doors and asks questions after the crater forms. His hammer isn't just a weapon, it's also a symbol of protection, consecration, and ceremony. In weddings, it was laid on brides' laps. In oaths, it was held high. Mjolnir wasn't just for smashing, it was also for blessing. You drift alongside Thor as he storms toward Jotunheim, home of the giants. The landscape changes quickly. Everything here is too big. Mountains look like discarded furniture. Rivers roar with glacial rage. Giants peer out from behind cliffs, muttering to each other and throwing the occasional boulder like bored kids tossing marbles. They're old, primal, and very unimpressed with gods. Thor doesn't care. He smashes things. You watch him duel Hrungnir, a stone-headed giant with the fighting finesse of a drunken rhino. The fight is loud, ridiculous, and ends with Thor's hammer buried in Hrungnir's face. A sliver of whetstone, broken off from Hrungnir's weapon, lodges in Thor's skull. It stays there. He walks it off. You try not to think too hard about it. But even Thor can't kill every giant. They multiply. They evolve. Some are cunning. Some beautiful. Some terrifyingly neutral. They don't just want to destroy the world. They want a place in it. You get the uneasy feeling that this whole gods versus giants thing isn't so clear-cut after all. You trek back toward Asgard, your mind swimming with impressions, roots, ravens, runes, giants, goats. It's all connected, all hanging from a tree that hums with possibility and decay. Even now, you can feel it groaning under the weight of fate. One of the Norns looks up briefly. Maybe she smiled. Maybe not. Night falls. Stars drift overhead, those wandering sparks stolen from Muspelheim. You wrap yourself in a cloak woven from divine wind and mortal dreams. Tomorrow, Odin will scheme. Loki will joke. And somewhere deep beneath your feet, something ancient will stir. You can't see it yet, but it's coming. You wake to a low rumble, somewhere between a distant avalanche and a war drum, muffled by clouds. It's not thunder this time. It's Odin, brooding. Again, you squint and find him perched on Hlidskjalf, that high seat in Asgard from which he surveys the entire cosmos like a CEO too micromanagey for his own good, one eye glowing with cryptic knowledge, the other an empty socket of sacrifice. You can almost hear his internal monologue. If I squint hard enough, maybe I'll finally understand the secrets of death, time, and whatever Loki is up to. Today he's not alone. His brothers Vili and Ve are noticeably absent, having dipped out of the narrative long ago, probably off in some forgotten realm, sipping metaphysical cocktails. Instead, Odin surrounds himself with his inner circle, the All, Father's court of divine misfits. You shuffle into the hall quietly, trying not to bump into anyone's rune staff or sacred mead cup. To your right, there's Frigg, Odin's wife. Equal parts regal and unreadable. She knows things, many things. She might even know more than Odin. But she's not saying. Frigg sees the threads of fate, too. But unlike her husband, she doesn't poke at them with sharp spears. She simply watches and whispers. You think about asking her what's going to happen to you. Then you remember everyone who's tried that ends up, let's just say, raven adjacent. The hall smells like pinewood smoke, sweat, and distantistiny. Odin stands suddenly, announcing it's time to consult the vulva, Asiris, a prophetess, someone who talks to death like it's an old co-worker. You tag along because, let's face it, you're nosy. The Velva is brought forth, her face weathered like driftwood, her eyes milk white. She sees past the veil. Odin asks questions in riddles. The Velva answers with poems. Typical. You catch fragments, wolves swallowing suns. Fire from the south. The end of all things. The word Ragnarök dances on her tongue. You lean in closer. Odin, ever the intellectual masochist, presses her harder. She tells him the gods will die. He nods, like this is fine. It's not. On the way back to the hall, Odin pulls you aside and explains the plan prevent Ragnarök by knowing it too well to fall into it. That's either genius or the most exhausting self-own in mythological history. Historians still argue whether Odin's obsession with fate is a tragic flaw or the Norse personification of curiosity's price. Either way, it's giving main character energy. You step away from doom forecasting for a moment to explore something slightly more cheerful: Odin's various wisdom quests. There's the time he visited the land of the giants, disguised as a wandering poet named Gunrother, where he won a wisdom contest by confusing his opponent to death. Or the time he traded riddles with Vafjiruthnir, a giant whose head metaphorically and then literally explodes from Odin's questions. The All-Father isn't just a warrior. He's a walking TED Talk wrapped in a raven cloak. But of course, knowledge isn't the only thing he hoards. There's Gungnir, Odin's spear, crafted by the dwarves, said to never miss its mark. You spot it resting beside his throne. Its tip gleams like it knows secrets it can't wait to share with someone's ribcage. Then there's Sleipnir, his 8-legged horse, somehow more majestic and unnerving than anything else in the stables. Legend says it was birthed by Loki, who was the mayor. Yes, you heard that right. And that opens the floodgates. Because if we're talking about weird, Loki wins the crown, cape, and chaos scepter. You wander off in search of him and find him lounging in the shade of a golden apple tree, likely avoiding whatever work Odin gave him. He smirks at you and flips a coin that lands on its edge, somehow defying physics, manners, and your sense of comfort. Loki is a shapeshifter, a trickster, and possibly the universe's most chaotic bisexual uncle. One moment, he's charming a goddess. The next, he's turning into a fish to avoid consequences. You try to follow his logic, but it slips through your fingers like eel oil. Still, he's not all bad. Not yet. There's the time he helped the gods get their walls. Asgard needed protection. A mysterious builder offered to construct impenetrable fortifications in exchange for the sun, the moon, and Freya's hand in marriage. The gods laughed, but Loki told them to agree, as long as the builder could finish within one season. Secretly, they hoped he'd fail. Problem: the builder had a superhorse. Like a mega horse. The kind that hauls boulders like you haul groceries after underestimating your shopping trip. As the deadline approached, panic set in. Odin glared at Loki. Fix it. And Loki did by turning into a mare, seducing the stallion, and disappearing for months. The wall didn't get finished. The builder turned out to be a giant shocker, and Thor smashed him with a hammer. Meanwhile, Loki returned pregnant. He gave birth to Sleipnir. The eight-legged horse Odin now rides proudly like it didn't come out of a trickster womb. Norse mythology doesn't judge. And frankly, neither should you. This little episode is one of many. Loki's antics shape Asgard's story as much as Odin's brooding or Thor's smashing. But there's always an edge to his tricks. A knife hidden in the punchline. You suspect that the jokes are getting darker. Still, for now, the gods laugh. You sit among them as mead flows and boasting fills the hall. Each tale is louder than the last one. God swears he can drink an entire ocean. Another claims to have tied a mountain in a knot. Typical divine nonsense. But behind the laughter, you notice Odin watching Loki. Not with affection. Not anymore. Later, alone under the stars. You hear a whisper, a distant prophecy echoing from the Norns, well, carried on the wind like smoke from a burning future. The end is written. The wolf waits. The serpent stirs. And the gods, they drink. You lay your head on moss that might once have been a frost giant's scalp and stare at the canopy of worlds spinning slowly above. The tree groans again. Not loud. Just enough to make you wonder if it's always sounded like that. Or if someone is beginning to gnaw just a little harder than before. You wake to a racket of hooves on stone and a shriek that could only mean one thing: Thor is commuting. You dive to the side, just as his goat-drawn chariot barrels past. Wheels, spewing sparks and bleeding, echoing across the sky. Tangrisnir and Tanjost, whose names roughly translate to Tooth Gnasher and Tooth Grinder, look completely unbothered. Thor, on the other hand, seems very bothered. Probably about giants again. Thor is the god of thunder, and he takes that job absurdly, literally. Every time he swings Mjolnir, the skies, rattle and mortals, lose laundry. You watch him flex unnecessarily and leap back into the clouds. Wherever he's going, something's getting smashed. As you make your way through Asgard in his noisy wake, you're drawn to a particular story floating through the golden halls, a tale that's half remembered. Sung, and entirely ridiculous. It begins with a theft. Someone has stolen Mjolnir. That's right. The most powerful hammer in the cosmos is missing. And Thor is not handling it well. He stomps around like a toddler who's lost his favorite toy, demanding answers. Loki, of course, offers to investigate. Maybe because he's helpful. Maybe because he knows exactly who took it. He flies off wearing Freya's falcon cloak, scanning the realms until he arrives in Jotunheim, land of giants. There, the culprit reveals himself Ymir, a particularly unpleasant giant, with a hairstyle that screams, "I cut this myself." Ymir has buried the hammer deep in the earth and refuses to give it back unless Freya marries him. Cue thunderclap. Cue eye twitch. Cue a room full of gods going, "Wait. What?" Freya hears the deal and practically breaks her necklace from rage. "Absolutely not," she says, tossing her cats in protest. So what's the solution? A little thing called cross-dressing. Thor, muscle-bound protector of Asgard, must go undercover as Freyja, complete with bridal veil, glittering jewelry, and zero kill. Historians still argue whether this myth was satire, ritual parody, or a lesson in humility. Either way, Thor in drag is both majestic and extremely uncomfortable. You follow the gods as they dress him up. Loki, of course, insists on being his bridesmaid. He's enjoying this way too much. The journey to Jotunheim is awkward. Thor can barely squeeze into the gown. His scowl alone could melt glaciers. But when they arrive, Ymir is ecstatic. Freya looks robust, broad-shouldered, slightly sweaty. During the wedding feast, the bride devours an entire ox, 8 salmon, and multiple barrels of mead. Ymir is suspicious. Loki leans over and explains. She hasn't eaten in 8 days, so excited for the wedding. It's a disaster, held together by pure chaos. Finally, Ymir orders Mjolnir brought out to bless the bride. Big mistake. The second the hammer lands in Thor's lap, the wedding ends very suddenly and violently. Guests fly. Tables flip. Loki cackles. You duck a chunk of giant skull and try not to get mead in your eye. The moral, don't mess with Thor's hammer. Also, maybe interrogate your fiancé before letting them bench press your cousins. Back in Asgard, life resumes. Thor returns to punching clouds. But the hammer isn't just a weapon. It's a sacred object, used to bless marriages, births, and funerals. Mjolnir tattoos have been found on Viking bodies, symbols of protection, even in death. Archaeologists still debate whether these represented religious devotion or just good luck charms. Either way, it meant something deep. You spend the next few days trailing behind Thor as he wages small wars against giants, sea serpents, and unfortunate landscape features. He's not subtle, but he's dependable. The gods may scheme and sulk, but Thor shows up. One day, you follow him to the edge of Midgard, where a vast sea stretches out, cold and glistening. Thor wants to fish. You blink. Surely this is a metaphor. Nope. Actual fishing. He borrows a boat from a giant named Ymir, who is deeply skeptical of this entire situation. They row into deep waters. Thor baits his line with an ox head. Subtlety has left the building. He casts the line and waits. And waits. Then snap. Something bites. The boat lurches. A monstrous shape rises from the depths. Coiling, ancient, and unbelievably angry. This is Jormungandr, the Midgard serpent. It's so large it circles the world and bites its own tail. And now it's hooked. Thor grips the line, roaring, dragging the beast up, ready to strike. His eyes blaze. The world holds its breath. But Ymir panics. Just as Thor lifts his hammer, the giant cuts the line. The serpent vanishes back into the black. Thor is not amused. You, meanwhile, are clinging to the boat's edge, trying not to vomit your soul out. This encounter is part of an ancient tension. Jormungandr is one of Loki's children. Yes. Again, with Loki, and destined to kill Thor at Ragnarök. Their enmity is cosmic. And this fishing trip is just a preview. A teaser trailer for the apocalypse. Thor doesn't say a word as you row back. His silence is loud. Later, you find yourself at a feast where gods brag about their conquests. Thor throws a drinking horn over his shoulder. It doesn't land. It keeps going. Loki shows up late, offers some insults, and everything spirals into a divine roast battle. Gods are not great at emotional regulation. You wander to the edge of the crowd where someone hands you a goblet and points you toward a familiar silhouette Odin, standing under the stars. Quiet, always watching, always planning. He murmurs that all of this, the hammer, the feasts, the serpent will end. We're not building a paradise, he says. We're building a memory. That sticks with you. The gods are strong. Yes, but they're not eternal. Everything here, every golden hall, every spark in the sky is already fading. Slowly, quietly, you sit beside the chariot tracks. Thor left burned into the clouds and think about what it means to live knowing the end is guaranteed. Maybe it's why the gods feast so hard. Why they fight. Why they love. Why they laugh. Even when Loki's joke goes too far, it's not about preventing the end. It's about making it worth the ride. And ride they do on goats. On fish. On eight-legged horses. The realms spin and sway. But Thor keeps swinging. And Loki keeps plotting. You close your eyes. Somewhere, a serpent stirs again. You open your eyes to the soft crunch of shifting snow beneath your boots and realize you've crossed into Jotunheim again. The realm of the giants. But this time, you're not sneaking around wedding halls or hiding behind Thor's hammer. No. This time, you're here to meet the messiest family tree in all 9 realms. And you've probably guessed it already, it's Loki's. You follow a trail of frost up a jagged ridge. The wind howling. Like it's annoyed to be here. The landscape around you is craggy, enormous, and deeply inconvenient for anyone under 8 feet tall. Everything here is big, angry, or both. And as you round a corner, there they are, Loki's children. Or at least, the first batch. There's Hel, standing silently in the snow. Her face, half beautiful, half rotten, like someone pressed Ctrl+Z halfway through designing her. She rules over Helheim, the underworld, a realm colder than a Norse apology. You nod politely. She does not nod back. You get the distinct impression that Hel doesn't get many visitors, and she likes it that way. Beside her is Jormungandr, the same Midgard serpent you watched Thor nearly catch while fishing. Now he's even bigger, so big, in fact, that you can only see part of him. A ridge here, a tail there, and that menacing ripple across the ocean in the distance. He coils around Midgard like a cosmic belt. Quietly awaiting the day, he'll snap it, and finally, there's Fenrir, the wolf, the problem child. You meet him before you see him, mostly because of the sound, heavy breathing, the groan of strained chains, and a low growl that vibrates in your spine. When you do see him, you flinch. He's massive, muscles like tree trunks, eyes that flicker with a glint of terrible knowing, and chained, very, very chained. You're standing in the quiet meadow where the gods once tried to deal with Fenrir. Odin, ever, the cautious one. They foresaw danger in the wolf and ordered him bound. At first, they tried ordinary chains. Fenrir snapped them like spaghetti. Then, stronger chains. Same result. So the gods turned to the dwarves, who, being overachievers with a flair for the unsettling, crafted a magical ribbon called Gleipnir. It looked like silk, but was made from impossible ingredients: the sound of a cat's footfall, a woman's beard, the roots of a mountain, the sinews of a bear, the breath of a fish, and the spit of a bird. Historians still argue whether these represent lost magical symbols or were simply Norse poetry's way of saying, "You're not supposed to understand this." Either way, you wouldn't find these at your local craft store. Fenrir, not being an idiot, refused to be tied up with this suspicious ribbon unless one of the gods placed a hand in his mouth as a pledge of good faith. Tyr, god of law and bravery, stepped forward. You watch the moment unfold again as Tyr places his right hand into the wolf's jaws and nods. The ribbon tightens. Fenrir struggles. Can't break it. Realizes the trick. And Tyr, he doesn't flinch. The wolf bites. The hand is gone. There's no scream. Just silence. The kind that echoes. You glance at Tyr, who now wears the absence of his hand like a badge. He doesn't regret it. That's just how Norse gods operate: sacrifice first, feelings later. Fenrir snarls behind his bindings, chewing at the air. He will not be chained forever. He knows it. The gods know it. You know it. But for now, he lies waiting, like a cracked dam, pretending to be harmless. You leave the meadow, feeling uneasy. It's not just the creatures that are dangerous, it's the gods' treatment of them. They bound Fenrir because they feared him, banished Hel because she was unsettling, tossed Jörmungandr into the ocean like a discarded pet. These weren't acts of mercy. They were preemptive strikes. And Loki, well, he noticed. Back in Asgard, Loki is unusually quiet. You find him in a shadowed hall, speaking to no one, flipping a dagger in one hand. He's already plotting, though he doesn't even know it yet. But the seeds are there, planted by distrust, watered by exile. You follow him as he slinks into the council of the gods. There's a feast. As usual, Freya is dazzling in her necklace, Brisingamen, which she may or may not have acquired through morally questionable negotiations with dwarves. That tale involves a cave, 4 smiths, and, possibly, a very awkward trade deal. You'd ask her about it, but her glare is very sharp. Freya is the goddess of love, war, magic, and finding out your ex was secretly a raven. She rides a chariot pulled by cats, leads the Valkyries into battle, and takes half the souls of warriors into her hall. Folkvangrer. Odin gets the other half. It's unclear how they divide the guest list, but there's probably a spreadsheet involved. Despite her beauty and power, Freya has endured grief too. Her husband, Other, wandered away and never returned. She weeps for him still, and her tears fall as gold upon the earth. You see one of them glinting in the firelight and wonder if anyone even remembers his name. Probably not. Norse mythology doesn't do happily ever afters. Loki stands across from Freya, watching her with a complex expression. Envy, perhaps, or regret. It's hard to tell with him. Then, in a voice soaked with mischief and malice, he begins to insult everyone, one by one. Gods freeze mid-bite. You'd think they'd be used to this by now. He mocks Odin's Kvardits, Frigg's secrets, Freya's necklace negotiation, and Thor's temper. He even accuses Sif Thor's wife of infidelity, which earns him a look that could shatter stone. Sif, whose golden hair was once shaved off by Loki as a prank, now wears hair of living gold crafted by dwarves. It shines unnaturally. A daily reminder that Loki's jokes always have consequences. The feast breaks into chaos. Gods shout, rise, threaten. Loki disappears before the mead cups hit the walls. And you, somehow unnoticed in the corner, sit frozen. That wasn't just a drunken rant. That was a fault line. Loki's words crackled with truth. No matter how sharp, the gods are not perfect. Not just. Not unified. Outside, the wind picks up. The roots of Yggdrasil tremble slightly. Far below, the chained wolf stirs. Hell smiles faintly in the dark. And in the ocean deep, Jormungandr twitches in his sleep. The pieces are shifting. Not fast, not loud, but undeniably. You walk along the edges of Yggdrasil's lower branches, where the air gets thick. Not with mist, but with questions, uncomfortable ones. Like, how exactly did Loki have children with a giantess? A horse. And possibly himself. The branches creak, and you duck instinctively, as if even the tree is trying not to get involved in that particular conversation. But you're already in too deep. And besides, you've come to meet the rest of Loki's family tree, and that tree, it's more like a spiraling vine of chaos. His children aren't just outcasts, they're harbingers, markers of endings. And if you thought Fenrir the wolf was dramatic, just wait. Loki's partner in these mythological parenting experiments is Angrboda, a giantess from Jotunheim, whose name means the one who brings grief. Lovely. Together, they produce three of the most unsettling creatures in all Norse mythology: Hel, who you've already met, Jormungandr, still doing laps around the planet, and of course, Fenrir, who's likely gnawing a tree into splinters at this very moment. You're not exactly sure what their household looked like, but you imagine it involved a lot of hissing, snarling, and zero bedtime routines. But Loki has other children too. Many others. One of the most unsettling is Sleipnir, the eight-legged horse. Gray as fog and fast as thought. The weirdest part, Loki gave birth to him. Yes, Loki once turned into a mare to distract a troublesome stallion as part of a prank that got wildly out of hand. And several months later, out popped Sleipnir. Most people would need therapy after an experience like that. Loki. He gave the horse to Odin like it was a perfectly normal baby shower gift. Historians still argue whether this tale was meant as high comedy, ritual allegory, or a cultural warning about overpromising in construction contracts. Either way, Sleipnir remains one of the most iconic mythological creatures, capable of galloping across land, sea, and sky with eerie grace. You spot him grazing on clouds near Bifrost, twitching his 8 legs as if dreaming of speed, even beyond his monstrous and magical offspring. Loki's family lines blur into odd corners of the mythic world. He's related to frost giants, bonded by blood to Odin, and constantly tangled in both divine business and giant drama. He's a bridge and a bomb, both indispensable and unbearable. The gods keep him close because they need him. Until they don't, you wander now through the lesser-known corridors of myth, following the stories that get whispered instead of sung. There's the tale of Vali, Loki's son with the goddess Sigyn, a minor but heartbreaking figure. Vali is transformed into a wolf and forced to kill his own brother Narfi, an event orchestrated by the gods as punishment for Loki's growing list of transgressions. Narfi's entrails are then used to bind Loki. Yes, it's exactly as grim as it sounds. Sigyn, meanwhile, becomes a fixture in Loki's punishment when the gods finally grow tired of his betrayals, pranks, and pointed commentary. They seize him. They drag him to a cave and bind him with Narfi's intestines to 3 rocks deep beneath the earth. Then, as if that weren't enough, they position a venomous serpent above his face to drip poison onto him, drop by drop. But Sigyn doesn't leave. She kneels beside him with a bowl, catching each drop before it can strike. Only when she turns to empty the bowl does a droplet hit his face, and Loki writhes in agony. His convulsions shake the earth, literal earthquakes, and Sigyn returns, bowl in hand, silent as frost. You find yourself beside her now. She hasn't moved, hasn't aged. Her face is lined, not with years, but with the weight of love that refuses to surrender. You want to speak, to offer something, but she doesn't acknowledge you. Her world is her husband's pain, and the tiny kindness she can give in return. It's hard to reconcile this scene with the Loki you know, the trickster, the insult thrower, the shapeshifter, the chaos engine, but here he is, shaking, snarling, suffering alone, but not alone, punished, yes, but also, in some part of the world, still plotting, still thinking, still waiting, because this is not the end. The gods believe they've stopped the unraveling by binding him, chaining Fenrir, exiling Hel, and tossing Jormungandr into the sea. But you can feel the flaw in their logic. It hums in the air like a taut string. You can't chain what's already loose. Can't silence a song that's already been sung, and Loki's song. It echoes in places the gods don't hear. You step back into Asgard and find the gods quieter now. There's tension in the halls. Odin watches the horizon more than he talks. Thor, too, seems less interested in smashing things and more in sharpening. The golden halls still gleam, but they feel thinner, like paint over a cracked wall. You overhear whispers of strange dreams, gods seeing visions of fire and wolves, of ships sailing from Helheim with armies of the dead. The Valkyries grow restless. Even Heimdall, the all-seeing, tightens his grip on Gjallarhorn, the horn he will one day blow to signal the end. But none of them speak Loki's name aloud. You linger near the edge of Asgard's cliff, watching the aurora slither across the sky like a serpent in the clouds. Somewhere far beneath you, Loki shifts in his bonds. Fenrir flexes his jaws. Hel sharpens her crown, and Jormungandr stirs in the deep, circling and circling and circling. Not yet, but soon. You sit there a while longer, the wind tugging at your cloak. The world is not ending today, but it is no longer beginning either. And in the distance, just faint enough to ignore, you hear the faintest sound laughter, muffled by stone, but real. The next morning, You wake to the scent of burning incense and polished metal. Something's different. The clang of hammers echoes from the roots of Yggdrasil deeper than you've gone before. This isn't Asgard, or Midgard, or even Jotunheim. You're descending into Nidavellir, the forge-lit realm of the dwarves. These aren't your garden-variety dwarves with big noses and comic relief. No, these dwarves are ancient. Brooding artisans with soot-stained hands and voices like gravel. You hear curses in languages no one's spoken aloud in centuries. Sparks fly in all directions as you step into the gloom of their underground halls. Carved with such precision, you swear the walls themselves hum. You're here to witness the creation of divine artifacts, things that shape stories. The dwarves may live in shadow, but they forge power. The first thing they show you is Mjolnir. Or rather, its origin, crafted by Sindri and Broker, two sibling smiths. It was a last-minute job sparked by who else? Loki. After shaving off Sif's hair as a prank, Loki promised Thor he'd replace it with golden locks. But, instead of stopping at hair, Loki upped the stakes, betting the gods that he could get the best gifts ever made. So, he went to the dwarves. He always goes to the dwarves when he's messed up, which is often there. They created not just Mjolnir, but also Draupnir, a golden ring that multiplied itself, and Gullinbursti, a glowing boar with bristles of light. Broker and Sindri, competitive as ever, worked, while Loki transformed into a fly, buzzed and bit, and tried to ruin everything. Historians still argue whether the fly was simply a trickster tactic or symbolic sabotage. The clash of chaos and creation. Either way, Loki nearly ruined Mjolnir's handle, which came out shorter than expected. It didn't matter. Thor adored it. And the dwarves, they won the bet. Loki lost. Again. You admire the tools, wrenches, anvils, chisels made from stardust and stubbornness. One dwarf, barely as tall as your hip, glares at you and mutters something about tourists. You step aside quickly. Further in, you find the mead of poetry. Yes, poetry. It's a magical brew made from the blood of a murdered wise man, mixed with honey, delicious, apparently, and deeply cursed. Anyone who drinks it becomes a master of verse and speech. Odin, of course, wanted it badly. You trail him through this memory, Odin disguising himself, infiltrating the giants who kept the mead hidden, seducing a giantess guard named Gunnloth, and spending 3 nights with her in exchange for 3 sips. He drinks the entire vat in one go. Show off. Then he transforms into an eagle and escapes. The mead is distributed differently depending on who you ask. Poets. They got the good stuff. Mediocre poets. Just a few drops. Everyone else well. Let's just say the gods claim Odin spilled some of it behind him while flying. So yes, bad poetry exists because of eagle poop. You can't make this up. Except someone did. You try a sip. It tastes like fire and language. Your thoughts suddenly rhyme against your will. You spit it out. Probably for the best. Back on the surface, Thor is showing off again, hurling Mjolnir across the sky and calling it back like a boomerang with anger issues. He's headed for the land of the giants. Again, and you follow. Because something odd is happening. Not a battle this time. A contest. The giant Utgarda Loki, no relation to regular Loki, though just as annoying, has challenged Thor and his companions to a series of games. What could go wrong? First, Thor tries to drink from a horn, only to find it never empties. He drinks and drinks, only to discover the horn was connected to the ocean. He literally lowered sea levels. Next, he tries to lift a cat. Seems easy. The cat arches its back, and Thor can only raise one paw. Turns out the cat is actually the Midgard serpent in disguise. Casual. Then Thor wrestles an old woman named Ellie. She pins him easily. She's not a woman, she's old age. And no one beats old age. Not even Thor. It's all illusions, designed to humble gods. And for once, it works. Thor returns Keter, which is honestly more terrifying than his usual bellowing. Meanwhile, Odin is off doing something profoundly unsettling. He wants more knowledge, this time from the dead. So he rides to the edge of Helheim and awakens a Velva, a seeress buried long ago. She rises, not screaming, but disappointed. What do you want? All-Father. He asks her about Ragnarök. She tells him what he already knows, that it's coming, that he'll die, that everyone will, that it's not stoppable, not negotiable, just inevitable. You feel the chill from her words long after she's sunk back into her grave. Odin rides back slowly, Sleipnir's hooves making no sound on the frost. The mead of poetry, the spear, Gungnir, even the knowledge of the dead, none of it makes him invincible. It just makes him informed. He returns to Asgard and speaks with Frigg, who already knows what he's learned. She never says how. She never asks him to stop seeking. But you can tell by the way she clutches her shawl that she sometimes wishes he would. That night, you sit with Freyr, the god of fertility and peace, who once traded his magical sword for a chance at love. Bad trade. Now, when Ragnarök comes, he'll face a fire, giant unarmed. Love's like that in Norse myth, beautiful, but expensive. Even Freyr's gifts come from the dwarf Skithblathnir, a ship that can fold into your pocket, and Gullinbursti, the golden boar. You ride it briefly. It's fast, warm, and snorts in Old Norse. Unnerving. You're beginning to see the pattern now. Every divine object, every magical item, every enchanted brew. It all comes with a catch, a flaw, a cost. Nothing is just powerful. Everything bends toward fate. Even now, as you sit by the forges and the mead and the halls of gold, the whisper grows louder beneath the tree. Not words, just tension, like a storm so far away it hasn't formed yet, but you already know what it will smell like, and somewhere deep in the dark. Loki smiles. You return to Jotunheim. But this time, not as a traveler or intruder, you're more like a barely tolerated guest. The realm of the giants sprawls before you, massive in every sense. Trees, the size of cities, sway in bitter winds. Mountains lean like slumbering beasts, and somewhere far off, a boulder rolls by on its own. Giants don't do landscaping, they just let nature frown aggressively. You step over a frozen river, the ice groaning under your weight. Around you, giantish architecture looms, stone towers carved from glaciers, doors tall enough to insult any god's ego. You're here to understand the Jotnar, not just as foes, but as neighbors. Unfriendly neighbors who occasionally try to destroy everything. Sure, but also deeply woven into the fabric of Norse mythology. You spot a few giants lounging on a cliff edge, lazily tossing rocks the size of barns at each other. No one flinches. This is probably their version of a casual picnic. The gods always talk about giants like pests. But you begin to realize they're more like the original inhabitants. They were here before Asgard rose, before Odin got his first raven, before Thor took his first goat-powered joyride. The frost giants are the children of Ymir, and you're quite literally walking on the remains of their grandfather. It gets awkward quickly. Inside a vast hall made of cracked basalt, you find a gathering. Giants laugh, argue, tell stories. You don't understand the language, but the volume suggests someone just insulted someone else's grandmother. They eat strange foods, roasted cave lizard, molten cheese, something that might once have been alive and angry. One giant offers you a mug of something steaming. You sip. It tastes like boiled thunder. You smile politely and pretend not to cry. Among them is a particularly sly-looking giant who introduces herself with a grin and no name. She leans in and tells you tales you've never heard of gods, begging for safe passage. Of Odin, trading favors he never intended to honor. Of Thor, sleeping in a giantess's bed and waking up confused, hammerless, and engaged. Historians still argue whether these giant-told tales were part of older traditions suppressed by later scribes, or simply localized storytelling. Either way, you begin to suspect the official Asgardian version of things might have some edits. The giantess shows you a frozen valley, where a great duel once occurred between Thor and the aforementioned Hrungnir. The impact craters are still visible. A slab of whetstone still juts out of the cliffside, matching the one lodged in Thor's skull. You touch it, and feel a faint vibration, like an echo of the thunder that struck here long ago. But not all giants are brute force monsters. Some are clever. You hear of Skrymir, the trickster giant who made Thor feel tiny by magic alone. He carried their provisions in a food sack, so tightly knotted, even Thor couldn't open it. At night, Skrymir slept, and Thor tried to smash his head with Mjolnir 3 times. Skrymir only mumbled something about leaves falling. It was all an illusion. Thor had been duped. The mountains Thor thought he was hitting still cracked today. Skrymir had created an entire pocket reality just to mess with him. It worked. Later, as you trek deeper into the icy north, you come across the ruins of a place once called Gastropnir, home of the wise giantess Mengluth. It's said that those who reached her hall could be healed, restored, or possibly transformed. You see runes carved in the frost, half melted by time. This is not a place of war, but of knowledge. Hidden knowledge. Giant knowledge. You sit under the shadow of a cliff as a blizzard begins to form. The giants barely notice it, but you curl your cloak tighter, and just as your eyes start to blur with snow and sleep, a fire flickers to life. Someone sits beside you. It's Loki. Of course it is. He doesn't speak at first, just pokes the fire with a stick that glows faintly red at the tip. He looks different here, less theatrical, more quiet. At home, you forget sometimes Loki is half giant. He belongs in both realms, and in neither. I told them once, he says softly, that the gods weren't better, just louder. You blink, and they laughed. So, I made sure they'd choke on it later. His voice is thin like smoke. You try to ask about his children, about Fenrir, about hell, about what he wants. But he shakes his head. I don't want anything, he says. I just keep score. Then he stands, brushes snow off his cloak, and disappears into the night like a question you're not ready to ask. You spend the next day traveling south again, through endless miles of jagged ice. It's not a peaceful landscape, but it's honest. Everything here has a shape and a purpose, even if that purpose is to flatten anything smaller than a troll's pinky toe. You see more giants. Some are monstrous. Some are beautiful. One flirts with you in what might be Old Norse pickup lines. You pretend not to understand and back away very slowly. But by the time you reach the edge of Jotunheim, you're no longer so sure the gods and the giants are enemies. It's more like a very long custody battle. With hammers, at the border, you see the Bifrost glowing in the distance. Heimdall is waiting, stoic as ever. He nods as you approach, but doesn't speak. Maybe he knows where you've been. Maybe he's been watching the whole time. Back in Asgard, the air feels different. Cleaner, sharper, but also more fragile. You find Odin alone in the Great Hall. His raven's absent. He's looking at a map, but not of Midgard or Asgard. It's a map of Jotunheim. He glances up at you. Not surprised. Not angry. Well, he asks, "They're not what you said." You reply, "I never said they were anything." He mutters, "I just prepared for what they might become." You don't reply. You don't need to. The fire crackles quietly. Outside, the storm has followed you. The snow taps lightly at the golden doors. And far beyond, in a realm made of stone and frost, a wolf opens one eye. You trudge into a hall lit with flickering torches and echoes of laughter. But tonight the gods aren't boasting of battles or flexing enchanted trinkets. Tonight, they're telling the tale of the mead of poetry, and somehow, it starts with a murder. Of course it does. You scoot closer to the fire, ready for one of those stories that begins with a crime and ends with someone getting really good at metaphors. Long ago, the Aesir and the Vanir, two tribes of gods, called a truce after a long and awkward war. To seal the deal, they all spit into a bowl. As one does, from this divine spit, they created a being named Kvasir. Yes, he was made from peace spit. Try not to dwell on it. Kvasir turned out to be the wisest man in the cosmos. He wandered the realms, answering questions, solving riddles, and making everyone else feel like they'd slept through important meetings. Until one day, two dwarves, Fjalar and Galar, invited him in for drinks and promptly killed him. Classic dwarf behavior. They mixed his blood with honey and brewed the mead of poetry, a drink so powerful it grants the gift of verse, eloquence, and deep philosophical confusion. The dwarves kept the mead hidden until a greedy giant named Suttungr threatened to drown them. They panicked and offered it to him. He accepted, hid it in a mountain, and set his daughter Gunnlóth to guard it. So now the most valuable drink in the universe is stashed away under giant babysitting. Odin hears about this. Of course he does. And because Odin can't stand not knowing things, especially when mead is involved, he embarks on a plot, not a quest. A full-blown, shape-shifting, deception-layered operation that would make a con artist proud. First, Odin disguises himself as a laborer and works for Suttungr's brother, Baugi. He earns his trust, pretends to be humble, then manipulates Baugi into helping him drill a hole into the mountain where the mead is stored. Odin turns into a snake, slips through the crack, and emerges inside the chamber with Gunloath. And here's where things get blurry. Odin woos her. How exactly depends on who you ask. Some versions say poetry. Others imply more persuasive methods. Either way, he spends 3 nights with her and earns 3 sips of the mead. He drinks all of it, every drop. You admire the commitment. Then he transforms into an eagle and takes off. Zotung, also an eagle. Now because, apparently, that's just what giants do. Chases him. Odin races back to Asgard, just barely making it across the walls before spitting the mead into jars. A few drops fall behind him. That's where bad poetry comes from. Sorry. 7th grade English class. You hear the gods chuckle as they recall the tale. Even Thor, who hates poetry unless it involves punching, allows a small grin. This story is one of the few where Odin wins outright. He schemes, lies, seduces, steals, and it works. No tragic cost. No eye lost. Just mead, metaphors, and a new literary scene. But then you hear the dwarves muttering. Not just Fjalar and Galar. Long gone. But others. They don't care much for Odin's methods. They whisper of other things they've forged. Not just mead, or Mjolnir, or ships that fold into your pocket. No. They talk of curses. You follow them into deeper caverns, where shadows cling to the walls like gossip. They show you a ring Anvaranot. It's cursed. Always was. Once owned by a dwarf named Anvari, who hoarded gold like it was air. Loki stole the ring. Of course, trying to pay off a blood debt, and Anvari, in his fury, cursed it. Anyone who owns it suffers ruin. The ring passes through hands like a poisoned coin. It ends up with a man named Hreidmar. Then, with Fafnir, who becomes so greedy, he transforms into a dragon just to protect his hoard. He coils around his treasure, hissing at the sun. Eventually, the hero Sigurd kills him. Yes, we're wandering into saga territory now. The legends that form a sort of Norse extended universe. Sigurd slays Fafnir, roasts his heart, and accidentally tastes the blood, gaining the ability to understand birds. The birds immediately warn him, "Hey, everyone's going to betray you." Very helpful birds. He ignores them. Mistakes are made. Tragedy ensues. Back in Asgard, the dwarves shrug. Told you so. You climb from their forges back into the daylight, blinking at the brightness of the gods' world. And yet, their light feels dimmer now. You've seen what happens when power is mishandled. What happens when greed, whether for gold or mead or knowledge, gets out of hand. Even Odin, triumphant with his poetry, feels more brittle somehow, like a man who drinks not for joy, but because silence is unbearable. You rest beneath a tree on the edge of the gods' feasting hall. A harp plays. A Valkyria sings, her voice low and melancholy. Across the courtyard, a wolf snarls in its dreams. A snake slithers in the clouds. The gods drink, and inside the mead of poetry, somewhere in its golden swirl, lies every truth ever spoken, but also every lie. You find yourself near the edge of a deep canyon, in the lowest reaches of Nidavellir again. But this time, the forges have gone cold. No sparks, no hammer clanks, just silence. The dwarves are gone, or hiding, or working on something they absolutely don't want you to see. You smell oil, old metal, and the kind of dust that only settles when something ancient wakes up. You trace the path toward a cavern lit by blue fire. There's a new story being whispered, one the gods barely mention. It's not about a hammer, or a ring, or even a cursed sword. It's about why the dwarves are so angry. You follow a corridor carved with runes, each one pulsing softly as you pass. You touch the wall and catch a glimpse brief. Blinding of the day, the gods cheated the dwarves again. They'd promised riches, honors, maybe even a slice of divine power. And then, as usual, they reneged. The dwarves didn't forget. They never do. You emerge into a chamber cluttered with broken attempts, half-made weapons, mishaped helmets, armor with curses folded into the seams. The dwarves aren't just craftsmen, they're keepers of grudges. They forge consequence. And then you see it one last artifact, still glowing faintly. A collar meant to control wolves. Never used. Or maybe, never worked. You know who it was for, back above ground. The gods carry on as if the world isn't fraying at the edges. They feast again tonight. And the hall is more crowded than usual. You find a seat next to Balder. The god everyone seems to like. He's radiant. Not metaphorically, he actually glows faintly. Like sunlight through clean linen. You half expect birds to land on his shoulder. Balder is kind. Too kind. And lately, plagued by dreams. Dreams of his own death. Frigg, his mother, panics. She rides across the realms extracting promises from everything fire. Water, Eirone, trees not to harm her son. Everything agrees. Everything, except mistletoe. It's a weed. Really. No one thinks about it, except Loki. At the feast, Balder shows off his new invincibility. The gods throw spears at him, axes, rocks. He doesn't flinch. It's all a game. Harmless fun. Until Loki hands a spear made of mistletoe to Balder's blind brother. Höður. You watch it fly. It pierces Balder's chest like silk through cloth. He falls. The laughter stops. Frigg screams. No one breathes. This moment fractures the gods. Not because they didn't expect death, but because they thought, foolishly, they could prevent it. Balder was supposed to survive Ragnarök, supposed to rebuild the world. But now he's gone. Frigg begs someone to go to hell and plead for Balder's return. Ermother volunteers. Riding Sleipnir down the shadowy road, no god wishes to travel. You follow. The cold thickening with every mile. Hell's realm isn't fire and brimstone. It's silence. D'Enfer. Endless twilight. The kind of sadness that soaks into your teeth. Hell greets them coolly. She agrees if every single thing in the world weeps for Balder, she'll release him. So the gods spread the word. Everything weeps. Trees, mountains, rivers, even rocks seem to drip with sorrow. Everything except one. A giantess in a cave. Or maybe it's Loki in disguise. The figure laughs. Refuses. Balder stays in Helheim. Historians still argue whether this tale reflects a seasonal myth. Balder as a sun god slain in winter. Returning in spring, or a deeper moral on the limits of divine control. Either way, nothing hits the gods harder. You return to Asgard, where Frigg no longer speaks. Odin walks alone more than usual. Thor sharpens Mjolnir, like he wants it to say something. And Loki, he's vanished. But his fingerprints are everywhere. There's another death after this. Not divine, but just as painful. Loki's son Vali is transformed into a wolf and tears his brother Narfi apart. The gods do this. Not enemy. Not monsters. The gods. They use Narfi's entrails to bind Loki beneath the world. Set the snake to drip venom on his face. You've already seen Sigan kneeling beside him. She still hasn't moved. Now the gods stop laughing altogether. You notice Odin writing more. He carves runes into stones, trees, even the air itself. He's preparing not for victory, but for precision. Every move, every whisper, every dream has to be perfect. He visits seers, speaks to the dead, stares at stars until they go out. But even with all his knowing, you sense he's afraid, because now it's not just prophecy. It's happening. Thor dreams of a wolf eating the moon. Heimdall hears a horn blowing, but no one's touched it yet. Freya's cats hiss at nothing. Frey's sword hums with longing. And you see a ship being built from fingernails. It's not metaphor. It's Naglfar, the ship of the dead. And it's almost ready. You stand at the edge of Bifrost again. The bridge glows. Still beautiful, but flickering now at the edges. Heimdall doesn't greet you. He stares into the distance, where something huge is moving. Slowly, inevitably, you turn around and realize the gods aren't pretending anymore. The end has already begun. You don't notice it at first. The small tremble in the air. The way shadows fall longer than they should. The faint metallic tang behind every breath. But the gods do. They've known for a while now. Though none will say it aloud. It begins not with a shout, but a groan. Somewhere deep within Yggdrasil, the world tree shivers, and the roots that hold up all 9 realms begin to rot. Not all at once. Just enough to creak. Just enough to wake the things that wait for cracks. You walk the halls of Asgard in silence. No feasts now. No thunderous laughter or contest of strength. The gods are quiet, as if waiting for a door to slam in the distance. Odin stents bisle hiskelf. But he doesn't sit anymore. He watches the Bifrost with an unreadable expression. One hand resting on Gungnir, the spear that has never missed. The other hand curling into a fist behind his cloak. The ravens no longer bring gossip. They bring countdowns. Thought and memory perch silently on his shoulders, blinking in unison. You ask what he sees. He answers only with a question, would you still fight? Even if you knew the ending, you don't reply. No one does. In Midgard, things are worse. The sun dims. Crops wither too soon. Children are born weeping. Wolves stalk the edges of villages, no longer afraid of firelight. And across the sea, the ice breaks open. It isn't a storm. It's a ship. Not just any ship, Naglfar. The boat made from the fingernails and toenails of the dead. Every time someone died unclean or unburied, a nail was added. Over centuries. The ship was built, quietly, morbidly. But now it floats. It sails from Helheim, gliding over black water. Crewed by the dead and captained by Loki, he stands at the prow, unbound, unchained, eyes glinting with something between triumph and sadness. Sigyn isn't with him. She stayed behind, bowl in hand. Some bonds, even in Anga, never break. Jormungandr steers next. You feel the shift before you see it. Tidal waves that shouldn't exist. lightning storms without clouds. He rises from the sea. A serpent, so vast he breaks the ocean in half. His coils unspool across the horizon. He doesn't hiss or roar. He doesn't have to. He opens his mouth, and poison pours out not just into the water, but into the air, the soil, the bones of the world. His eyes meet Thor's before anything else. And that gaze carries an old promise, a fight neither asked for, but both will finish. Fenrir follows. The chains break, not snapped or pulled, but simply fall away, like they were always meant to. The wolf steps forward, each paw print leaving scorch marks on stone. His fur bristles with sparks. His mouth opens wider than logic allows, and in it, Aski disappears. The sun vanishes. Then the moon. The sky dims not with night, but with absence. He runs toward Asgard. Unstoppable. The earth cracks beneath his weight. You swear you hear him laugh. In Asgard, Heimdall finally lifts Gjallarhorn. He's waited for this moment since the beginning. Standing watch on the Bifrost for centuries. The horn blows, and it does not echo. It devours. Sound doesn't bounce. It is consumed, sucked into the fabric of what was once time. Every realm hears it. Every creature feels it. Even those long dead stir at its call. This is Ragnarök, the twilight of the gods. The Aesir ready themselves. Odin mounts Sleipnir, his 8-legged steed, and rides to face Fenrir. He doesn't flinch. He knew this day would come. He planned for it, feared it, prepared again. And still, the wolf swallows him whole. Not a fight, just a fact. The All-Father dies like anyone else, fast, brutal, and mostly ignored by the beast that's been dreaming of his bones. But vengeance comes. Vidar, Odin's Silentson, steps forward. You've barely noticed him until now. But he's been waiting, always waiting, wearing a shoe made from the discarded scraps of all shoes thick apparry. Layered, indestructible, he wedges it into Fenrir's jaw, grabs the wolf's snout, and tears it in half. No poetry, just power. Elsewhere, Thor finally meets Jormungandr. The battle is loud. You don't see it so much as feel it, like standing beside an exploding mountain. Mjolnir cracks bone and scale. The serpent wraps around him, bites, squeezes. Thor kills the beast. Then he takes 9 steps away and falls. Poisoned. The thunder dies with him. Frey, god of peace and prosperity, faces Surtur, the fire giant from Muspelheim, whose sword is made of sunfire. Frey has no weapon. He gave it away for love. Long ago, he dies screaming, and Surtur laughs as he raises his blade and burns the world. Loki and Heimdall find each other. 2. The trickster and the watchman. They fight with everything they have: spear, blade, magic, fury. They stab. They curse. They collapse together. One final knot in a tapestry that was always unraveling. The world cracks open. Surtur's flames sweep across every realm. The oceans boil. The sky tears like paper. Yggdrasil groans one last time before it falls. You're not standing anymore. You're floating, or falling, or both. And yet, not everything ends. Some gods survive. Balder returns from Helheim, stepping into the ash like a seed breaking through soil. Hodur too, the blind brother who once killed him, walks beside him. They say nothing. They don't need to. Two humans emerge, Lif and Yggdrasil, hidden deep in the trunk of Yggdrasil during the chaos. They step into a new world, blinking in the light of a sun reborn. The wolf that swallowed it is gone. The sky is blue again. The air smells of fire, but also of beginning. A new world rises from the sea. Green, soft, unmarred. The rivers run clean. The animals return. There are no cities, no halls of gold, just soil and sky and silence and hope. You watch the survivors gather not just gods, but beings from across the realms. They don't talk about the past. Not yet. They build a small fire. They share what they have. They wait, because they know that even after the end, there is always something left. And you exhale. You've seen it all now. From ice and fire to the end of gods. You were there when the world was made. And again when it was burned. You walked beside giants, gods, monsters, and ghosts. And now, finally, you sit beneath the pale new sun and rest. You rest beneath a sky scrubbed clean by fire. The stars haven't come back yet. As if they're still deciding whether it's safe, the new sun glows low. Not with the fire of Surt, but with something gentler newborn warmth. The kind that doesn't scorch but stirs. Around you, grass begins to push up through ash. Impossibly green. Stubborn in that quiet way, life always is. A soft breeze carries the scent of pine and damp stone, as though the world is exhaling for the first time. You walk through the fresh silence. No crunch of bones. No echoes of war horns. Just the whisper of a realm rediscovering how to breathe. Not far from where Yggdrasil once towered, a gathering forms. It isn't a court, or a feast, or even a council. Just those who remain. Balder stands among them, more luminous than before, as if death stripped him of sorrow. Beside him, Höder, no longer blind, though his eyes are darker than they should be. They speak very little, and when they do, it's in words that feel like echoes from some other time. Vidar is there too, quiet as ever, wiping Fenrir's blood from his boot. He hasn't spoken since Odin died. You don't expect him to start now. And then there's Modi and Magni, Thor's sons, carrying Mjolnir between them like it still hums with their father's rage. They speak in short, practical sentences. They aren't poets. They are builders. Together, these few gods begin to reimagine the world. No thrones. No palaces, used clean stone, fresh water, and shared space. You help when you can, hauling stones, clearing burnt roots, planting the seeds Lif and Yggdrasil carry tucked into their sleeves. The two humans speak little. Their words are heavy with the weight of being the last and the first. You watch them build a hut from saplings and old rope. It's small. It leans. But it stands every evening. Someone builds a fire. Not for celebration. There's little to celebrate but to remind everyone that warmth still exists. You sit beside it and listen. Balder tells stories now. Slow and measured. Not tales of glory, but of caution. He speaks of what was lost pride, vengeance, unchecked hunger for control. He never says his father's name, but you feel it in the pauses between sentences. They remember Frigg's weeping, Odin's long walks beneath the tree, Thor's booming laugh echoing over mead. They remember Frey's sacrifice, Heimdall's stillness, even Loki's smirk right before everything fell apart. No one curses the past, but no one wants to rebuild it. Either you climb a ridge one morning and find the stump of what used to be Yggdrasil. It's blackened, hollow, but not dead. A single green sprout curls from its bark. Not large, not dramatic, just there, alive. You kneel beside it and place your hand on the wood. It's warm. Scholars today still argue whether Ragnarök was meant to be an ending or a cycle. Was the rebirth literal allegorical, a cultural reflection of long, hard winters followed by spring? No consensus, only fragments. But here, in the soft soil beneath your fingers, you know, something remains. Always. That night, you dream. In your dream, you see Asgard, not the shattered ruins, but the golden halls from long ago. The rainbow bridge glows. Heimdall, standing tall once more. Thor laughs from a distance, carrying goats under each arm, like furry sacks of potatoes. Freya dances beneath a silver moon, her cats weaving around her ankles. Odin watches from his high seat, silent but proud. And Loki, he's there too. Not bound, not smirking, just watching. You wake with tears in your eyes and a hawk circling overhead. Life continues. Awkward and tentative. There are no more gods of war. No more realms to invade or defend. No giants stalking the borders. Just wind and water, and slowly returning deer. You find yourself carving runes into bark now. Not for spells, but for memory. You remember the squirrel Ratatoskr, the insults between eagle and dragon. You remember mistletoe and mead, wolves and weddings, fire and frost. You remember how it all began. And then one day, a child is born. Lif gives birth beneath a willow. And the world feels smaller again, but fuller. The gods gather not with pomp, but with herbs and warm cloth. The baby wails once, then settles. No name is given yet. That will come later. Names carry weight. And here, everyone knows the cost of carrying too much. That night, if you look up at the sky and see one star, just one, it's enough. You lie on your back in the grass. It's soft again. You hear the rustle of new trees and the far-off crack of a growing glacier. Somewhere, Jormungandr sleeps beneath deeper seas. Fenrir is dust. The snake above Loki is gone. And the gods, those who remain, watch the world not like owners, but stewards. There is no prophecy for this part. No song. No end note. Only quiet. And you rise with the sun now. Not because you must, but because there's something sacred in the way light spills across the reborn land. It doesn't crash into the sky like before, full of thunder and divine rivalry. It just appears soft and wide, turning ash to gold. The gods no longer march through Asgard with trumpets and fire. There is no Asgard, only a gently growing settlement near the stump of Yggdrasil, where everyone carries wood, tends crops, and tries to remember how to laugh without making someone bleed. You lend a hand building a bridge over a new river. It isn't Bifrost, not even close, just logs and rope, damp with dew and trembling under the weight of its own ambition. But when you cross it, it holds. Balder walks beside you most mornings. He doesn't talk about death. He doesn't talk about being stuck in Helheim. The gray quiet of it. The centuries of not feeling. Instead, he talks about beans. Soil. The best place to plant onions. It's strange to see a god who once radiated like a torch, now stooping to pull weeds. But then again, maybe that's the point. He smiles more now, not because he's happy, necessarily, but because he knows what it costs to lose everything and still be standing. At night, Hodor practices carving wooden animals. His quiet, precise, and his hands move with more confidence than his voice ever will. He gives the first carving a clumsy-looking bird to Yggdrasil, who smiles like it's treasure. No one says much about their roles as the new parents of humankind. They just work, eat, and occasionally exchange looks that say, "We weren't trained for this." But whoever is, one afternoon, Magni and Mothi dig up what's left of their father's old belt. It's charred, but intact. They don't try to wear it. They bury it again, with a stone that reads only Thor. You expect more fanfare? Maybe a booming cloud. But the sky stays silent. That night, they take Mjolnir to the forge and hang it on the wall, not for battle, not for worship, but as a tool, something to hammer nails. Maybe. The gods have no thrones now, no armies, just a handful of rituals that still feel sacred. They still mark the solstices, planting seeds at one, harvesting at the other. They share stories, mostly incomplete ones. Loki appears in them still, but no longer as a villain, more like a trick of the wind, the part of fire that dances before it burns. Some gods return slower. Idun, goddess of youth, is seen wandering near a spring with a basket of unfamiliar fruit. You ask her if they're the golden apples of old. She only shrugs. I grow what I can now. You bite into one. It tastes like lemon and something older, maybe memory. Even the Norns have not returned. The well they tended lies still, rimmed in moss. Some say they still whisper from the roots. Others say fate was washed away in the flood of Ragnarök. You kneel beside the well one morning and press your ear to the stone. No voices, just wind. Maybe that's enough. Freyr's sister, Freya, hasn't come back. Or if she has, she's hiding. Some say she walks as a fox now. Watching quietly, you spot a red shape in the woods sometimes, vanishing when you turn. The cats are gone too. Or perhaps they're reborn as wild things feral, unbothered by prophecy. You walk often now. The world is bigger than it used to be. Or maybe just emptier. Some parts are still smoldering, others already overgrown. You find the melted remains of Surtra's sword, lodged in a mountainside, steaming faintly even now. No one dares touch it. Fire, that old doesn't forget. One morning you climb a hill that didn't exist before. It wasn't here in the old world. Not part of any realm. Just a lump of new land, shaped by chaos and cooled by silence. At the top is a stone cairn, no name, no runes, just a circle of black feathers around it. You leave an offering one of Idun's apples. You don't know why. It just feels right. The people are changing too. Lif and Lee, Thrasir's children, grow fast and oddly quiet. They don't ask questions about gods or giants. They don't pray to anything. But when thunder rolls in the distance, they look toward the sky and squint. Not in fear. Not yet. Just curiosity. They sing strange lullabies. Half-formed. Half-remembered. You recognize fragments, golden hair. 9 nights. A serpent in the sea. The sagas are returning. Not as history, but as instinct. One night, Balder stands and speaks. Everyone gathers. He doesn't shout. His voice isn't louder than the wind, but it carries, "We won't rebuild what was." He says, "We remember. We honor, but we don't repeat." There's a long pause. Then, someone Magni maybe says, "But we keep the stories." Balder nods. Especially the stories. The fire crackles louder for a moment, then softens. Afterwards, you wander off alone and find a small pool reflecting the stars. Not constellations anymore. Those are gone, but pinpricks of light, slowly finding their way back. You see Sleipnir in the pattern. Or maybe it's just 8 dots in a crooked line. Either way, it calms you. You lie on the grass and listen to the world shift. No dragons gnawing roots. No eagles screaming from treetops. Just frogs. A breeze. A creaky fence someone hammered together with Mjolnir. The gods are no longer gods in the old sense. They don't demand worship. They don't hurl lightning. They sit in circles, pass bowls of stew, and occasionally argue about whether goats can be house-trained. You suspect Thor would be proud. Odin's eye was never recovered. But sometimes, ravens still follow you. You ask them what they want. They never answer. You wake to the sound of wind chimes made from bones, not human. Don't worry. Probably deer. Or maybe dragon ribs. Hard to say these days. The gods have taken to hanging charms outside their huts. Not to ward off evil, but to remind themselves that sound still exists. That silence isn't king. You step outside into a world that no longer feels like a battlefield. The grass is taller. The air warmer. Insects hum like they've been waiting millennia to reclaim the soundtrack. You hear laughter in the distance. And for once, it isn't forced. It's children playing. Note godchildren. Just children, born from Lif and Leithrasir's line. They run barefoot, unburdened by prophecy or politics. No one tells them they must grow up to lift hammers or wield runes. Their only job is to grow. Balder tends a garden now. And today, he shows you something strange. A patch of blue flowers blooming in a perfect spiral. He didn't plant them. No one did. They just arrived. Signs. He says, "Not looking up." But of what? I'm not sure. You touch one. It feels like cool silk and hums faintly when the wind passes through. Hodor says nothing but nods once. Slowly. Even he can feel it. The world is changing again. It isn't a return to the old ways. No one rebuilds Valhalla. No one reopens the vaults where the weapons were stored. The gods don't want halls of gold or choirs of slain warriors. Those stories died in the fire. And no one misses them. What rises now are simple things. Smokehouses. Stables. A school where the children learn to read by copying runes onto bark. The stories they write aren't about Ragnarök. They're about rivers. Snowstorms. Wolves that steal shoes. You smile at one scroll where a child drew Jormungandr wearing sunglasses. Some myths evolve whether you want them to or not. You help Freyr's last followers build a stone circle to mark the seasons. The sun hits it just right during the equinox, casting shadows in the shape of antlers. We don't worship anymore. One man explains, "We just want to remember what warmth feels like. You understand? The old gods weren't kind. They were powerful. They burned bright and fell hard. This new world, it's slower, gentler, and deeply unsure of itself." One afternoon, a stranger arrives. She walks from the sea, barefooted, hair like silver wire, eyes the color of storm clouds. She doesn't speak for 3 days, just watches. On the fourth, she sings, not in any tongue, you know, but the air around her thickens when she does. Grass bows, water stills, even Balder leans ein. Surprised, she stays for a while, then leaves behind a cloak made of feathers and bone, folded neatly on a stone. No one takes it. Yet, you begin to notice other odd things, birds you've never seen before, statues appearing in the woods, carved by unknown hands, fireflies that hover only over certain graves. Are these omens remnants, or simply the world remembering how to be strange again? Historians would argue endlessly about the symbolism, but there are no historians here. Just you and the rustling reeds. You visit the old battlefield once. It's quiet now, covered in moss and lavender. You find what's left of Heimdall's horn, Jallarhorn buried in the soil, like a tusk from a forgotten beast. You pull it out and blow. No sound comes out. Maybe that's for the best. Maybe it was never about warning. Maybe it was about listening. The gods hold council once a season. No thrones, just tree stumps and a circle of woven mats. Everyone gets a voice, even you. Sometimes, the topics are small weather patterns, storage. Whether foxes are stealing grain, It's not glamorous, but it works. Mathi suggests building a windmill. Magni calls it a waste of time. Hodor proposes training the children in herbs. Balder supports it. No one argues for very long. They're learning. One evening, a child asks where the monsters went. Balder smiles. They're resting. The child frowns. Are they going to wake up? Balder shrugs. Maybe. But now we know how to welcome them. You catch the child drawing a picture later of Fenrir curled up next to a campfire, wearing a scarf. It hits you then. The world isn't trying to be perfect. It's trying to be better. And better is enough. You help build a library. Though no one calls it that. Just a place to keep stories. The shelves are made from driftwood and old beams. The books are bark, bone, vellum stitched with hair. You copy everything you remember. Not just the great battles, but the soft moments, the time Frigg cried over a flower, or when Thor tried to bake bread and broke the oven. These are the stories people gather around. These are the stories that matter now. You find yourself writing more often, not because anyone asks, but because someone might want to know. You write about the serpent, the tree, the mead, the laughter, the betrayal. You write about Loki not as villain, not as hero, but as fire, necessary, dangerous, beautiful in the right hands. You plant a tree outside your home, not ash, not another Yggdrasil, just a tree. You don't name it. You don't worship it. You water it. That's enough. One night, you see something across the hills. Not smoke, not fire, just light soft, pulsing, rising from the earth like breath. You walk toward it. You're not afraid. The air smells like thyme and salt. The wind carries voices. None you recognize. But they're laughing. somewhere in the dark. Something new is waking up. You pose. You don't need to follow. You don't need to understand. You just smile. Turn back. And walk home. You dream again. Though, this time, it doesn't feel like sleep. It feels like memory. Borrowed. You walk through a long hallstone. Not gold lined with carved panels. Each panel tells a different story. Not with words, but with shapes. A circle coiled like a serpent. A wolf biting the sun. A tree with roots that stretch past the stars. As you touch each panel, a name comes to you, Fenrir. Jörmungandr. Yggdrasil. But also new names. Unspoken names. Names that have yet to be spoken aloud. You turn around and see yourself reflected in polished obsidian. Not a god. Not a mortal. Just a witness. When you wake, the sky is violet and heavy with mist. Baldur is already tending his garden. He waves, without turning. There's peace in repetition now. Each morning, you gather kindling. Each evening, you pass it on. The children play under watchful trees. Someone hums an old tune near the cooking fires. Nothing grand. Nothing divine. But steady, and the steady things endure. That afternoon, you join Mothi and Magni as they rebuild the bridge over the stream that flooded during last week's rains. The old logs rotted. The new ones are thicker. They work in silence, but not the uncomfortable kind. The rhythm of labor is music. You think about Thor, how he would have lifted all the beams by himself just to prove a point. His sons are different. Less flash. More care. You see their father in the set of their shoulders, but not in their tempers. Later, you visit the place where Odin fell. There's no marker. No monument. Just a patch of ground, where moss grows in the shape of a spiral. Some say that's where Sleipnir vanished. Others say the ground simply remembers. You kneel and press your hand into the earth. It feels warm. A single raven feather lies there. You don't take it. You leave it where it is. Around the same time each day, someone brings water from the spring near the foothills. It's become a quiet ritual. Not religious, just practical. Hoder carries the pails today. He never speaks much. But when he does, people listen. He's begun carving symbols into the new buildings, not for magic, but for beauty. Runes that mean hearth, peace, laughter. You find one over your doorway. It wasn't there yesterday. As summer deepens, new animals appear. Not beasts from the old tales, no dragons or nightmare wolves, but deer with eyes like old souls. Birds that sing melodies. No one remembers teaching them. One morning, you spot a fox watching you from the tree line. You blink, and it's gone. You wonder. You always wonder. That night, a storm rolls in. Not Ragnarök. Just rain. Thunder booms gently, as though apologizing. You lie awake in your hut, listening to the rhythm on the roof. Somewhere in the dark, a child laughs. Thunder used to mean war. Now it means watering the barley. You think about Frigg sometimes. She hasn't returned. Or maybe she has. Quietly, as wind in the tall grass. Her name is still whispered when someone needs patience, or when someone loses something they thought was forever. There's no shrine to her. But near the well, someone has planted white flowers. They bloom even on cloudy days. The people begin building boats again, not to conquer. not to raid, but to fish, to explore. They carve gentle prows shaped like dolphins, swans, even mushrooms. The sails are woven from flax and dyed with crushed berries. You help stitch one, pricking your finger more than once. Magni laughs and tells you to stop bleeding on the heritage. That evening, a group gathers by the shore. The boat is ready. They name it Memory, but say it in a way that makes you believe it's also a promise. As it pushes into the sea, the crowd hums, not a song you know, but one you feel in your ribs, like the sound of something old deciding not to end. Later, Balder asks if you want to help write the calendar. No one remembers the old days perfectly. And frankly, the moon doesn't rise like it used to, so they decide to invent months anew. You suggest names based on weather. On sounds. The month of ash rain. The quiet one. Goat calving moon. No one laughs. They add it to the bark scroll and hand you a quill. H night grows cooler now. Autumn, or whatever passes for it here, arrives in shades of gold and rust. You gather with the others beneath the stars. The constellations are strange, some familiar, some impossibly new. One child insists they see Loki's face in the stars. Another says they see a hammer, or maybe a fish. You nod either way. Let the sky belong to them. One morning, you find a stranger by the river. He says nothing. His hair is pale blue. His boots are scorched at the soles. You offer him bread. He nods, eats, and disappears. That night, a willow tree blossoms unexpectedly. The next morning, you see someone has carved a perfect spiral into the trunk. No one speaks of rebuilding Yggdrasil. The old tree lived, died, and dreamed the world through. But saplings now grow around its stump. A grove, quiet and slow. Someone suggests naming them. You write the first, down hope. As winter approaches, the gods begin preparing shelters, not just for people, but for animals, for seeds, for books. The new library gets a roof made from woven reeds and birch bark. Someone brings the first snowfall in a jar, preserved like a relic. It melts. They laugh. They try again. And through it all, the stories remain. Loki still flickers at the edge of the firelight. Thor still thunders in jokes and elbows. Odin watches in the pause between thoughts. The gods haven't disappeared. They've become habits, smiles, the strength behind a tired step, the kindness of sharing the last apple. They are here not as rulers, but as memory, coiled gently through everything that dares to live again. You lie in bed that night, not fearing the end. You've seen it, survived it, walked through the smoke and come out humming. Tomorrow will come, maybe with snow, maybe with fireflies, maybe with another story to write. You close your eyes, and the world keeps growing. By now, the days blur softly, like the edges of a dream you're not trying to wake from. The world has lost its sharpness, and it feels like a kindness. The wind no longer howls with prophecy. The trees don't whisper omens, and even the birds seem less frantic. You step outside into this quiet and realize something rare for the first time in an age. There is no war to prepare for, no fate to dread, no horn waiting to be sounded. You exhale, and nothing breaks. The new world has reached a rhythm. Homes are sturdier now. The fields bloom in earnest. Rivers, once choked with ash, now shimmer with silver fish. and the occasional mischievous otter. There's a ritual now. Each morning, where everyone walks the grove of saplings growing around Yggdrasil's old stump. No prayers, just silence. A breath, the understanding that they are alive, and the world somehow is still choosing to exist. Today you join Hoder and a few others as they gather the season's last herbs before the frost settles. He teaches you to smell the difference between what heals and what tricks. His hands are gentle, and his instructions, few. He says little about the past. But when you mention Frigg, he nods just once and murmurs, "She's here." You believe him, whether she's the white mist clinging to the field edges or the stillness before a snowfall. It doesn't matter. Some things return in pieces, quietly enough that even gods don't notice. That afternoon you help finish the final wall of the library. The bark scrolls, rune-etched stones, and stitched vellum are carefully tucked onto the shelves. There's a section labeled Before, another called After, and a third, still empty, titled Yet. A child walks in, stares at the empty shelf, then places a tiny drawing of a horse with 8 legs beneath it. No one moves it. Some memories need no explanation. Magni and Mothi have become unofficial protectors of the village. But there's little to protect anyone from these days. Still, they patrol, if only to give shape to their days. Sometimes they spar gently outside the gathering hall. And once, they even wrestled for the last apple. They laugh more now. Mothi's laugh is deep and sudden, while Magni's is sharp and teasing. Neither of them speaks of Thor, unless it's about something stupid he once said. They don't mourn him. They honor him by living loudly, and with terrible table manners. At the edge of the settlement, a new building is going up. Not a temple, not a hall, just a round shelter for stories. They call it the Circle. Inside, people take turns speaking, telling whatever they remember. Some speak of the time Loki convinced a goat to guard treasure. Others share stories of Sigurd's patience, Odin's sacrifice, the serpent that sang lullabies. And you, well, you tell them about the way the firelight once danced across Gjallarhorn, even long after it had gone silent. It's in this circle that the first new myth is born, not about gods. Not really. About a girl who followed a fox through the forest and found a river made of stars. She drank from it, forgot her name, then remembered a better one. She brought the water back and used it to grow a tree that bloomed only when people told the truth beneath it. The children ask if the story is real. No one answers. It doesn't matter. The myth is already stronger than memory. You spend your nights walking now. There are paths that didn't exist before, trails worn down, not by prophecy but by curiosity. You find places where the moss is unusually soft, where owls perch and stare without blinking, where mushrooms grow in perfect circles. Some nights you light a small lantern and sit alone at the edge of the world, watching stars slip back into the sky one at a time like cautious guests at a forgotten party. You whisper names into the dark, some old, some yours. One evening, you see Balder sitting near the grove. He's humming. Not a song you recognize, maybe something from Helheim. Or maybe just something he made up to keep himself from fading. He doesn't speak when you approach. But after a while, he hands you a stone. It's warm, carved with a spiral. You don't ask what it means. You just hold it and nod. The animals speak more these days. Not in words. Exactly. But in moments. A stag that doesn't flinch when you reach out. A crow that follows you for 3 days, then disappears after dropping a shell at your feet. A bear seen only once, covered in moss, walking upright through the snow. Some believe they're old gods, returned in softer forms. Others think they're just wild. You don't need to decide. You just wave when they pass. As winter deepens, the cold returns, but not with cruelty. It brings memory. The lakes freeze in intricate patterns. The northern lights return. But subtly, like watercolor behind a veil, you see faces in them. Or maybe just suggestions. Thor's grin, Freya's sharp eyes, Loki's smirk, fading at the edges. One child insists she saw Sleipnir galloping between 2 stars. She draws it. Everyone believes her. Snow falls. But gently, the people gather closer now. Fires brighter. Stories longer. They make bread shaped like suns. Drink spiced cider from shared bowls. And carve images into the ice. Not of war. Not of fire. Just of fish. Owls. Trees. And hands. That night, a stranger arrives. Hooded. Tall. Quiet. He doesn't speak. Just leaves a scroll at the door of the library. Then vanishes. Inside is a single sentence. Remember that even endings deserve echoes. You don't know what it means, but it feels true. By now, the world has settled into something not quite new, but not old either. You feel it in your bones. This isn't the sequel to the old myths. It's a different rhythm altogether, one shaped by resilience, quiet joys, and the refusal to vanish. Before bed, you sit at your table and carve a rune into the wall, a circle, broken only slightly, with a dot in the center. You don't name it, but if you did, you'd probably call it here. Then you blow out the candle, and the dream continues. Winter in the new world doesn't roar like it once did. It arrives on quiet feet, breathes frost onto windows, and folds itself into the corners of every home. You pull your cloak tighter as you step outside, where the wind no longer carries ash or omens, just the smell of pine and snow-heavy air. Smoke trails from chimneys in soft spirals. The sun barely rises now, hovering low on the horizon, painting everything in pale gold and blue. The village is sleepy, but not still. Children build animals from snow foxes, bears, even a laughing snake with a crown. You smile. Myth endure. Even when the world turns. Inside the circle, people sit closer, sharing not just stories but warmth. The fire crackles with the weight of memory. Someone tells of Tyr, who sacrificed his hand to bind Fenrir, and the hush that follows isn't fear, but reverence. Someone else asks whether Fenrir was evil or just a creature made too strong for the world he was born into. The elders don't answer. They let the children decide. You're called on to speak. You think back to the oldest days before gods, before trees, and tell the tale of Othumbla, the great cow who licked the first god from the ice. A few laugh, a few nod. One child asks if she's still out there somewhere. Probably. You say, looking for more salt. That night you lie beneath thick blankets, listening to the wind sing through the chinks in your wall. You dream of roots vast, tangled, glowing. They twist through snow and stone, carrying warmth to places no sun touches. When you wake, the fire is still burning. The days grow shorter. The sky turns silver. The ground hardens beneath a quiet layer of frost. But no one dreads it. Winter now is a chapter, not a curse. You help string lanterns through the trees carved from bone and horn. Lit with gentle flames, they guide wanderers back to the village. Though few wander far, the world may be kinder now, but it is still vast. Magni and Mathi organize a feast, not for war or gods, but just to mark the middle of winter. They roast root vegetables, press cider, and challenge each other to see who can build the tallest snow cairn. The mead flows, though it's weaker than the old days. No one breathes fire, just sighs. During the feast, a song breaks out. Old words, new tune, a tale of the end and beginning, sung with laughter and aching. Hoder adds a verse about the stars. Balder hums along. When they finish, someone says, "That's one for the library." And everyone nods. You wander outside and find the grove of saplings heavy with snow. One tree, taller than the rest, has begun to twist upward, like it remembers something. You reach out, touch its bark. It feels like memory. It feels like a promise. On the horizon, a strange light appears. Not the aurora, but something more focused. You gather with others to watch. It's a comet. Some say, a falling star. An omen. Whispers, one child. Maybe, says Balder. But maybe it's just beautiful. And that becomes the accepted truth. Not everything must mean something. Sometimes the world offers light, simply because it can. The next morning, you walk to the spring near the ruins of the old well. Someone has built a small bench there. No inscription, just a place to sit and listen. You sit. You listen. The water still runs. It trickles over stone and root, whispering nothing urgent, just that it's still here. You spot a figure down the trail, tall, slow-moving, wrapped in furs. As you approach, you recognize the stranger who left the scroll in the library. This time, he speaks. The world hums softer now. He says, you nod. He smiles faintly. That's how new songs begin. He hands you a seed. It's black as night and warm to the touch. You pocket it without question. You look up, but he's gone. Later, you plant the seed. Not in the grove, just outside your home. You don't mark the spot. You don't tell anyone. But you water it. And wait. Weeks pass. The snow thickens. The wind sharpens. But the people remain steady. They stitch new cloaks. They mend roofs. They carve spoons from driftwood and toys from bone. The children play a game called Build Asgard, which mostly involves stacking logs and pretending to shout orders at imaginary giants. You find yourself smiling more than you used to, laughing at things without checking if they're sacred. You make up a song about slaying squirrels. It becomes inexplicably popular. The gods, or what's left of them, still gather sometimes. Not to decide fate, just to drink and talk. And remember, they don't miss their old power. Or if they do, they don't say. Hoder teaches the children to read runes. Balder teaches them how to listen. Mathi teaches them how to throw snowballs with precision. It's a good curriculum. One morning, you wake to birdsong. Not the usual chirps, but something complex layered. You step outside and see the trees humming with color. The seed you planted has sprouted overnight. Not tall, but strange. Its leaves shimmer between green and gold, as if undecided. It smells like morning. You touch its trunk. You feel something under your skin. A warmth that isn't yours. A song you didn't know you'd forgotten. You don't ask what it means. You just smile and water it again. By early spring, the world is singing again, not the booming chorus of gods clashing in the skies, but a gentler song, stitched together by meltwater, birdsong, and the rustle of new leaves. The saplings in the grove now reach waist-high, their branches tipped with green fire. You walk among them every morning, brushing your fingers across bark that smells like ash and honey. None of them are as tall as the one growing by your home, the one from the stranger's seed, but they all hum faintly when the wind passes through. Like they're learning the tune of existence one note at a time. Baldur's face has changed. Not older, he doesn't age, but quieter. He still smiles, still tends the garden, but now he stops more often just to watch things grow. You catch him speaking to a tree one afternoon. Not in prayer, just in conversation. You don't interrupt. Whatever he's saying isn't for you. Hodor has taken to painting earth pigments on bark. Simple strokes of fire. Stars. Volves. His fingers move slowly, but there's clarity in every line. He gives the paintings away without ceremony. You find one tucked behind your door one evening. It shows a circle of people around a fire, and in the smoke above them, the outline of a serpent, gentle and watchful. You hang it above your bed. That spring, the first festival since Ragnarök is planned, not a god's holiday. No sacrifices, no sacred blood, just a gathering of everyone who's still here. They name it the blooming. Magni and Mothy build a long table under the trees, and everyone brings something roots. Bread, bark tea, 3 kinds of cheese. One child brings a frog. Everyone applauds. Freyr's name is spoken, but softly, like you're telling a friend you hope shows up late. You sing songs no one remembers composing, but somehow everyone knows the tune. When the fire is lit, it smells like memory and rain. That night, someone tells a new story, not of gods or giants, but of the first squirrel to cross the bridge between trees and return with a pine cone that whispered secrets. It's nonsense, obviously, but the laughter it earns feels older than the story. You add it to the library the next morning, under a new section called Possibly True. After the blooming, something shifts. Not in the world, but in you. You begin to feel the rhythm of this place settle into your body. You no longer expect signs or visions. You wake. You walk. You work. You rest. And still the wind comes. The light warms. The soil accepts your hands. There's nothing divine about it, but it feels like a miracle anyway. One morning, you return to your tree and find its bark splitting slightly. Not from damage, but growth. Inside the crack, a sliver of gold. You lean in and hear, not words exactly, but a rhythm, the same hum as the old Yggdrasil, though fainter, younger, like a lullaby being remembered. You don't tell anyone. Not yet. In the coming weeks, others begin noticing strange things. A new root system beneath the settlement, pulsing softly with heat, even in the cool night. Birds returning that no one can identify. A deer with horns, shaped like twisted runes. The people don't panic. They wonder. They watch. They plant more trees. Odin's name returns not shouted, not worshipped, just spoken quietly during difficult decisions. What would he do? Someone asks. He'd sacrifice an eye and wait. Someone answers. Everyone laughs. But they still vote carefully. That's how myth lives now, not in thrones, but in metaphors. Loki, too, becomes more present, not physically, but in stories, jokes, the sudden breeze that knocks over a stack of scrolls. Someone blames Loki. No one apologizes. One child starts leaving bits of food on the hearth, just in case he's hungry. The fire burns longer on those nights. Maybe coincidence. Maybe not. You find a scroll in the library one evening. Unsigned. Unmarked. It simply reads, "Chaos is just potential," with a sense of humor. You smile and slip it under the yet section. In midsummer, the sky changes again. Not ominous, just broader. The stars have shifted. New constellations form a boar chasing a grain of wheat, a raven holding a lantern, a fish with wings. The children name them. No one corrects them. The old names are gone. These belong to the now. Balder begins teaching children to shape clay. Not idols, not symbols, just things they find beautiful. One makes a spiral, another a leaf. One child sculpts a tiny wolf. Smiling, no one flinches. At the edge of the settlement, a new structure rises, a circular stone platform with no roof. They call it the listening place. People go there not to speak, but to hear. Wind, water, the quiet shifting of trees. You sit there often. It's never truly silent, but it's never loud. The sapling by your home is taller now. Its roots stretch under your floor. One morning, you find a single leaf on your pillow. It's shaped like an eye. You place it in a bowl of water, and it glows softly through the night. The next morning, the bowl is empty, but you feel rested in a way you haven't known since the end of the old world. That evening, you sit with Balder beside the fire. He speaks of dreams, not visions, not prophecies, just dreams. He dreamed of Frigg braiding her hair beside a lake, of Thor hammering stars into the sky, of Loki asleep beneath a tree with a smile on his lips. Do you think they'll return, you ask? They already have. He replies, you think of the wolf in the child's hands, the squirrel in the story, the way your tree hums when no one is near. Maybe gods don't disappear. Maybe they dissolve and reassemble in stories, in laughter, in seeds that sprout when no one is watching. As the summer draws to a close, a comet returns, the same as last year, or maybe different. Someone lights a fire on the hill. Others follow. Soon, the entire settlement glows with small flames. 1,000 flickering reminders that even in darkness, something burns. You sit beside your tree, now taller than your roof, and press your hand to the bark. It doesn't speak. It doesn't move. But it listens, and in its stillness, you feel everything, the end, the beginning, and the space in between where stories live. The last warmth of summer melts into the quiet of early autumn, and you feel the shift before the leaves even turn, not just in the air or the light, but in how people walk, how they speak, how the world exhales. It's not sorrow, not weariness, just a deep, shared understanding that something has fully turned. The new age isn't arriving anymore. It has arrived, and you are part of it. Your tree has begun to flower. No one else's has. Its blossoms are pale blue, almost translucent, and they open only at night. A soft glow pulses from within them, steady as a heartbeat. You sit beside it after sunset, listening to the leaves rustle even when there's no wind. You still don't know what kind of tree it is. You don't ask. You let it be whatever it is becoming. The village no longer looks like a place recovering. It looks like a place chosen. There are woven banners now. Nothing grand, just patterns of stars, wolves, branches, boats. A new child is born. And for the first time in this world, a name is given not from the past, but from the now Luma. It means the first light you didn't expect. Everyone agrees it suits her. You begin to write again. Not scrolls, not sagas, just notes, observations, a new kind of wisdom. You write about how people smile with their whole faces now, how they sing off key and don't care, how the gods aren't gone. They're woven into how people plant, laugh, forgive. You leave the pages in the library, under a new section called Still Living. One morning, you wake before dawn and find the sky filled with birds, not crows, not ravens, but starlings and finches and birds without names. They wheel in vast spirals, their wings catching the light of a rising sun that has never felt more like a beginning. A hush falls over the village as everyone watches. No one speaks. No one claps. The sky becomes a canvas of movement and light. And for a moment, you swear you see shapes in the flocks. Odin's missing eye, Thor's hammer, a great tree blooming from fire. And then, the birds scatter, and the silence returns. And somehow, the world feels even more complete than before. In the weeks that follow, stories pour from the people, like water from a spring. New myths take shape not to replace the old, but to sit beside them. A girl who speaks with the stars, a boy who can hear trees weep, a goat who walks backward into time. The gods laugh from within the cracks of these tales. Invisible but amused. Your tree bears fruit. Just one, round and shimmering, the size of a fist. You pick it, and the moment you do, the wind picks up. Soft but certain. You don't eat it. You place it in the circle during story night, and no one touches it. They just let it sit, glowing faintly. Someone says, maybe it's the first fruit of a new Yggdrasil. Someone else says, maybe it's just a glowing apple. You say nothing. Both feel true. That night, as you sleep, you dream one final dream. You're standing on the bridge between what was and what is. The shattered Bifrost. Only now, it's whole again, not with magic, not with gold, but with woven threads of memory, laughter, and shared bread. Across it, you see all the gods, not as they were, but as they've become smaller, brighter, softened by time. Odin nods once. Frigg smiles with her whole being. Thor tosses a stone, missing his target and laughing. Loki winks. And then they're gone. You awaken to find a child sitting outside your home, drawing in the dirt. I dreamed about a giant cat who eats stars. They say, but only the bad ones. You nod and ask, what did the stars taste like? They reply, apples and thunder. And you believe them. In the coming days, the grove becomes a forest. The world doesn't end. It deepens. It ripens. The firewood cracks less harshly. The frost no longer stings. The long nights stretch, but feel shorter somehow. You are older now. Not in bones, but in breath. Your hands are not heavy, but sure. You walk slower, but see more. You speak less, but are heard more often. And when the first snow falls again, you do not dread it. You open your hands to it, watching the flakes gather in your palms like tiny runes. You let them melt. You smile, and then, at last, you rest. Wind down 300 words. And now, as your eyelids grow heavy and the hum of the world fades into soft night, let your breath slow like a settling fog. Picture yourself there in that quiet grove beyond time, beneath stars that have never been charted, beside a tree whose roots curl gently through forgotten myths and whispered dreams. The fire has gone low, but its warmth remains, not just on your skin, but deep in your chest, like the comfort of a story fully told. Around you, there is no danger, no storm to outrun, no prophecy to fulfill, only stillness, only the soft rhythm of leaves brushing against each other. The gods you once feared, the monsters you once fled, have become background notes in a lullaby sung by the wind. Even Ragnarök, the end of all things, was just a pause, a space where new growth could begin. And in that space, you now rest. You are not alone here. All around you, the world is cradled in renewal. Creatures curl into burrows. Water finds its course again. Myths sleep too, waiting to wake in new forms. Perhaps tomorrow you'll walk to the listening place again, or find another story scratched in the frost on your window. But for now, there's nothing more to do. Close your eyes, breathe with the trees, and drift, slowly, into the soft quiet of a world reborn. Sweet dreams.